Good morning, welcome to Fashion News, and what a juicy week it has been. It started with Stella McCartney parting ways with LVMH Group, then Glenn Martens is now to become the new creative director at MAISON Margiela. Alessandro Michele made his haute couture debut at Valentino, and Lady Gaga is back with a new album and a front cover with fashion magazine Elle. And on top of that, we do have some juicy fashion gossip for you guys. Matthieu BLAZY might be bringing menswear to Chanel. I'm here to discuss it with my guest today, fashion stylist and editor Jennifer MICHELE'S, David M. Watts, the host of Just a Fashion Minute podcast, stylist and creative director of Sen magazine, Joe Phillips. Thank you all for joining my show today. Let's get to the very first topic that kicked off the week, Stella McCartney parting ways with LVMH Group. The question is, why would she do that?
Well, I love Stella, and some have said that potentially it's because Bernard Arnault, he was seen at the Trump inauguration. So Trump has said to be eliminating all of the sustainability laws that have been put in place, and obviously Stella, being a major sustainable brand, didn't want to, have anything to do with that. So, I think that's a really good reason for her to part ways.
Yeah, Jennifer, I've heard that speculation on the internet as well. Do we agree that that was really the moment when she was like, enough, I'm going on my own?
I think it probably is a factor because she's incredibly dedicated and focused on sustainability, as is her whole business. But I actually think it's more fundamental. I think it's about business and I think it's about money. Turning your back on LVMH is a very unusual decision, and having the option to buy back the small stake that they owned is very interesting. But actually, if you look at the numbers, 3 years ago, they were 30 million in the red on probably a 35 million turnover.
And you mean for Stella McCartney as a brand?
Stella McCartney, the business. I believe last year, turnover, annual revenue was 40 million, and they were 8 million in the red. So it doesn't sell. Fundamentally, it doesn't sell. And frankly, I've always thought that Stella, in some respects, has slightly grown old with her brand. I mean, her days at Chloe, fantastic, but she's a woman of a certain age now, which is absolute. I'm not dissing, but actually, that feeling, that idea of the younger customer, that younger consumer, that the traditional it girl, amazing, but that isn't what the clothes are. I mean, I find it really frumpy. I just don't think it's hitting the mark.
So David, you're saying the numbers are red, and obviously LVMH is all about money and numbers being green, not red.
And more money.
So are you saying that she got fed up with the pressure from LVMH money-making machine, and she says, I don't care about the numbers, I'm gonna go on my own?
I think it was probably a mutual decision with LVMH saying, would you like to buy back the share of your business? I.e., we don't want to, because you saw what happened with Off-White. The news was like, LVMH, basically gets rid of Off-White. I think to have a diplomatic exit, that she's buying back the stake in her business, is a much more sort of graceful and a much more sort of fair assessment. But I think it's about money. I don't think it's about, I just don't think the brand is working, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And also, at the end of the day, and I'm not throwing shade, she is the billionaire-ess. Her father is worth, 1.4 billion. She's not going to be worrying about it. And I think she's a very independent woman, an independent designer. But equally, all those things in the back of the, one day I'm going to be, a billionaire, regardless.
Before we move to the next topic, the very last question on Stella McCartney, do we think that she's gonna keep that bid that she just bought from LVMH, or do we think that she's gonna look for another investment group to invest?
Well, it's interesting because obviously she was originally with the Gucci group before she went to LVMH.
Correct.
I tend to agree with David. You can't overnight, in a period of a week, make that kind of financial agreement with somebody. So it's something that's been discussed for a long time. It's interesting, you all used the term sustainability, but actually, when she was a Gucci group, she was the least sustainable because of all of the hardware and the metal that's used. She is a vegan designer, absolutely, and she's always been that. But sustainability is slightly different. Just because you're vegan does not make you sustainable, and I think it's really, really important. If you think about the amount of metal that are in a lot of those bags, for example, that is very damaging to the environment. Sorry, but I think that point needs to be made. No brand can separate from a business partner that quickly. I feel what David said about her being an independent and thinking like an independent, and also she doesn't have money worries. So I would be surprised. She's been with the two biggest. Why would she go with anyone else? Unless she decided that the Prada group. But I think this is about, I'm doing it my way.
Now, doing it our own way, we had another juicy topic this week. Glenn Martens becoming the new creative director of Maison Margiela. The internet has spoken, and the internet says that Glenn Martens has super big shoes to fill. What was our reaction when we heard the announcement of Glenn Martens becoming the new creative director of Maison Margiela? Joe?
I personally am very excited. I think it's a really good choice. I think the reason I think it is a really good choice, Galliano bought a real reaction to it, and it was really interesting, and it was a moment. But actually, when you go back to the heritage and the DNA of what Margiela initially started with, Glenn Martens, for me, is far more in keeping. And if you look back over his career and the things he's done, the fabrics he understands, Margiela is about core fabrics. It's not about a Devore satin. It's about cottons and leathers and jerseys. And actually, Martens is really good at that. But he also has the conceptual understanding of Margiela. But he can sort of almost do with Diesel still, because he'll still be doing Diesel. He can do all the sort of funky stuff. But with Margiela, I really like him to take the mantle of Margiela and put his stamp on it. But it's almost like he needs to use that alphabet to create a new set of letters, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And what are his set of letters? What do we know? Because we have seen his work at White Project, at Diesel, his collaboration with Jean-Paul Gaultier for Couture collection. What do we know about him as a designer and his aesthetic, his DNA?
I love his use of like wiring and, you know, how he creates garments that, you know, like don't look like they're on the body. I think he has a really unique perspective. And I pulled out my tallest thigh-high boots in honor of him from his tall, like, leg, what were they called? Pant boots?
Correct.
That he had at
correct.
Y Project. These aren't Y Project, but the closest thing I have to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think, you know, his draping, everything. I'm really looking forward to it. I think.
Now, we have two fans. David, are you a fan of this announcement as well?
I think he's very talented. He joined Diesel, 5 years ago, and he said it was having a midlife crisis, which was wonderful. So I think he has, without question, he's incredibly highly regarded, and he has the fashion chops. But I think, from my point of view, I think I would love him to go back to more of the fundamental core message of what Martin Margiela, interestingly, somebody said today, Martens Margiela, but, you know, the original founder. It would be really nice to be able to go into that store and find, you know, the navy blazer or the grey wool pants that have that cut, that shape, the little white label or the label stitched with the white thread, you know, that's all we all want to know, it's Margiela. But actually, they would do those products on the rail, and they were because the cut was amazing. And at the end of the day, regardless of the quality of the fabrics, if the cut is there, it makes all the difference. You know, the cut, the art of cutting is both an art and a science. So I want to see those products. I want to see me being able to go into Margiela and shop again, you know, in my dotage.
Speaking of the cut, well, haute couture is all about craftsmanship and the cut. The most anticipated show of haute couture week was Alessandro Michele's debut at Valentino, because if we all remember when Alessandro Michele was announced as Valentino's new creative director, the whole internet said one thing, gosh, imagine the couture, the couture, the couture, the couture. So, was couture truly worth the hype? What did we think of the show?
Well, I'm a maximalist, as you can see with all my like jewelry. I absolutely loved it. It's like an ADHD brain like mine, time traveling and going to like my grandma's sitting room, like doing some quilting, making a gown out of all the quilting I'm doing, and then going to like a 1950s circus. Like there's like so many, you know, going to the Victorian era. It was so many different things and all like just thrown into this big melting pot of like glorious over-the-top fashion. I loved it. I loved the sequins, I loved the embellishments. I thought a lot of it was just really fun. And I thought, you know, a lot of the time fashion is beautiful and, you know, it's, you know, really a unique art, but having fun with fashion I think is really important. And I think he brought the fun to fashion.
Was it really fun, David?
Well, I love Jen's take on it, but it wasn't fun for me. I was traumatized, absolutely traumatized. I couldn't get any reference to everything that was odd and sort of disparate and, you know, sort of from sort of pre-Raphaelite and then sort of very strong 80s. And I totally get what Jen says, but actually, to me, I think there has to be some sort of thread that runs through couture collections. It is, of course, they're one-off pieces, they are individual clients, but there's something about the whole collection that you have to get a sense of. And the shapes and, you know, the hooped dresses that were kind of right up to the neck and full sleeves, full fitted body, and then right out to these hoops that you couldn't sit down in, you couldn't hardly walk in. And in these, you know, it just looked excess for the sake of excess. But also, it was a little bit sort of eccentric and kind of what he likes to do. But my feeling is that he sort of wants to be eccentric almost for the sake of it. And it's kind of like, I don't care what people think. I want to do what I want to do. A little bit like JW at Loewe, soon not to be. But at the end of the day, you know, couture for me is romantic, it is visionary, it is dreamy, it is the artisan, the craft. I mean, those fabrics, the textiles, the fabrication, amazing. Probably thousands of hours. But the finished product just didn't deliver. And set, you know, on that stage with the ticker tape, and, you know, I just didn't get, it just didn't work on any level for me.
I like how different your opinions are on this particular collection. Joe, you are the expert when it comes to brand's DNA. And I think the most challenging job for a fashion designer like Alessandro Michele, who does have a very strong DNA of his own as a designer, I think it's really difficult to switch the mindset and not to honor your own DNA, but to actually honor the house that you work for DNA, which in this case, Valentino. Was the show Valentino enough for you?
That's a trick question.
Well, no, the thing is, I would say, I mean, you've thrown up actually about 5 questions there. Thank you.
The ultimate question is, was it Valentino enough?
Well, actually, I'm going to just throw that question back in your face and go, what is couture? Because actually, when I looked, not just at that, but I looked at all the couture shows, but I think the Valentino, in a way, summed it up for me. What is couture in this day and age? For me, I totally agree with David in the regard of, for me, there has to be a thread. I mean, you know, let's get back to basics and go, what is a fashion show? It's fabric, it's colour, it's styling, it's silhouette. The nth degree of that is couture. So there has to be a thread that runs through it. There was no thread. And it did feel like, here's a look, here's a look, here's a look, here's a look. There were some looks that felt a bit Valentino, and then there were other looks that felt very him. But the bottom line is those 2 big questions here. Was it Valentino or was it him? And who are we doing couture for? For the designer or for the customer? And then I would say also third, who is the couture customer anymore? Because I looked at some of them and thought, that's going to look great on a Hollywood red carpet for some young singer. But for a 40-year-old actress going to accept a Oscar nomination, there's a lot of questions to be...
That's a brilliant question. And Jennifer, you work with a lot of celebrities as a celebrity stylist yourself. Joe, you threw a brilliant question. What is couture? Is there even, what do we all collectively think? Is there a future for couture anymore in general? Or is it just a big PR stunt?
There could be, but I think it depends. You know, each house has to decide what couture means to them. What couture means to Armani and what it means to Victor and Rolf is very different. But they need to be, I think Victor and Rolf probably and Schiaparelli are the best because they know what they're doing. It's about the conceptual thinking and it's there on the catwalk. And Mr. Armani is Mr. Armani. He does what he does. He just takes it up a notch for couture. So you've got those three houses that I think know what they're doing. A few that I looked at, they had like short skirts for like 18-year-olds. And then other ones have just, you know, long beaded gowns.
David, do you see a customer buying current Valentino couture?
I actually do not see, you know, what I would consider to be a 45-year-old woman who buys couture actually seeing this as how she wants to dress. I just don't see it happening personally.
Jennifer, you are a maximalist as you define yourself. You do also dress maximalist. So do you agree with what David just said?
You know, I don't think the whole collection will be for everyone, but I do see people I would put, you know, in some of the dresses that I saw walk down the runway. And also, it's not like they're buying things off the rack, consumers, so it's couture. So like if you want the sleeves shortened, for example, or you want that amazing like yellowy sequin fitted dress, you could ask for it with no sleeves on it, and you can have the neck cut a bit lower. That's the beauty of couture. So, you know, like you said, it's not fully wearable, no, but you can tweak it to be wearable.
But then what do you think of the fact that there wasn't, that both David and I felt there was not a thread running through it?
See, for me, I feel like what must have happened is he went through all the archives and took like different things he liked from all the different shows and was like, you know what, this is Valentino in a nutshell through the years. And I think that's what happened, and I love it. I think it's like I said, time traveling for like a runway show, and I love it.
I love time traveling because the person who travels through time and who is a real chameleon is Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is back with her new upcoming album. And not just that, she is the new cover girl of a fashion magazine, Elle. What a style revolution she is having. Have we seen that cover and that shoot, David?
Yes, I did. And I have to say, I think she is an amazing actress. I'm not as big a fan of her music. But actually what I do really respect about her is how she reinvents herself. And in some ways, she clearly thinks about this really carefully, but then it seems to be that she doesn't really care. I don't give a shit. I'm going to do what she wants to do. I'll dye my hair black. I'll go pure platinum blonde. But when she does it, it is still so original to her. And kudos. I think it's amazing. You know.
I do have to say, I was that teenage kid who grew up with Poker Face, Bad Romance, paparazzi, and actually Lady Gaga, I can say honestly, she is the reason why I'm into fashion, the reason why I have fashion news, the reason why I wanted to dress up and go to the shops and shop till I drop. What do we think of her new style?
I love it. I think she's never looked better. And I love the photo shoot in Elle. I think the way they have done it, they've like mixed her new life, which is like more wholesome and quiet and peaceful. I feel like that was like the lacy white bits. And then they still, you know, took her Lady Gaga stage brand and threw that in there with like the black, the feathers, like, and they just, I thought it was a great photo shoot, mixing, you know, marrying the two lives that she has, her stage life and her personal life. I love the look.
It was a very different type of Lady Gaga to the one that we are used to. It was less extra, the extra that teenage boy, me, that fell in love with. Apparently, she even brought her own pieces, and she said, well, great that you have a whole rack of clothes, but also why don't we use some of mine? Joe, you are the OG in creative direction and styling. Approve the look or do not approve the look?
I actually think she looks the best she's looked, personally. I think the black hair really suits her. I think she's much prettier with it. Interestingly, her face looks better. The darker hair suits her. I think she looked really well in it. And a bit like David, I'm not a fan of her music, but she's your generation's Madonna. You know, the reinventing of the look. But my issue with somebody that reinvents, that is a chameleon, is how true can you ever be to yourself? And that's my issue. With anybody creatively, when you have a really true, brilliant creative, their DNA will carry through. They can weave and ebb and move forward and transition, but you'll always see them in there. And so my question is, well, who really is Lady Gaga?
I agree, Joe. She is a chameleon, and actually, when I do think of her looks, my ultimate favorite was when she transformed into a boy. I was like, gosh, you really can be whoever you want to be, but who is she? We will never know. However, speaking of boys, that makes me think about menswear, because apparently the new creative director at Chanel, Matthieu BLAZY, is thinking about bringing menswear to Chanel. Whether that rumor is true or not, we don't know, but what do we think? Could it be true?
I mean, I really hope it's true. I feel like Chanel would be missing a trick if they don't bring menswear. They already have, in the fashion world, men carrying like the little quilted bags around. They have Lil Nas wearing the strands of iconic Chanel pearls. They have Snoop Dogg with, a CC logoed, scarf around his braids. Like, I feel like there's a market for it and they should tap into it.
I love what you just said, but that makes me think, because Joe, you remember last time we met, you said, what is Chanel? And Chanel was all about women's empowerment. Would it be going against the brand's DNA if Matthieu BLAZY did decide to launch menswear at Chanel?
No, because actually when you think about, again, the DNA of the brand, where did she take the idea of the tweeds, the trousers? It all came from menswear. And menswear comes from uniforms. And it's traditional and it's English. And so I actually think it would be really interesting. It'd be really interesting to see him use tweeds. I mean, I'm so excited. I think him joining Chanel is the most excited I've been about fashion in so long. And you remember last time we talked, I said very clearly, it has to be somebody that's out there, that's fresh, that's dynamic, because you forget that the DNA of Chanel, when she started, it was so out there.
Revolutionary.
It was revolutionary, thank you. And I'm so excited that they chose a revolutionary designer. I think if he does do menswear, Alfie will see it as a capsule collection walking through women's wear, if he does it initially, and we'll see how it takes.
Speaking from the male perspective myself, when I went to see Bottega Veneta show while he was still in charge of the house, I was like, if I had the money, the only brand I would be buying, head to toe, everything would be Bottega Veneta by Matthieu BLAZY. From a male perspective, David, would you be excited about Chanel menswear?
I think it's, I love what Jen says, but also the reference is so much younger because I'm an old hand in fashion. And yes, I would love a black tailored blazer from Chanel. Not necessarily tweed, but I think in terms of the rumor, I think it's just people just making up stuff as they go along. He's not going to have time to do menswear. He has such a huge job ahead of him right now to turn this brand, this super tanker of a brand around. I think over time, because Carl always did, Pharrell was a Carl fan and he used to make jackets for Pharrell. So, there's always been people kind of sporting some of the again, probably tweed, but that jacket, some tailoring, if you happen to know Carl personally. I think it would be a huge benefit to Chanel, but I think actually in a strange way, they would feel that it kind of goes against the grain. They don't, because they're very old school, aren't they?
Yes, but never forget, they have the auxiliary line of men's, which they do fantastically well with. So even if they started with some accessories, some leather goods, I don't think it's undoable.
I don't think they want to. I would be really interested because I think Bruno, the head of fashion, I think it's very old school. I don't think they'd want to at this point. And I think they shouldn't overload Matthieu BLAZY because, frankly, the expectations already on his shoulders, this chap going into this job, it's going to be unbelievable. And let's face it, unless you are, a real diehard fan of Chanel, a lot of people believe that Chanel has to take a huge leap forward. It's become fusty and dusty, and I think he has such a job that, you know, let him get on and start with women's wear and do amazing things. We can come back to menswear in a couple of years.
But don't forget when Carl took over Chanel, first of all, everyone told him don't do it because it was musty and fuzzy and old, and look what he did. And it took a few seasons. I think the thing that's very interesting is not so much whether he does menswear or doesn't do menswear, it's how long they are prepared to give him. And let's take the analogy, say, of football managers, who now they expect to turn a failing team round in one season. You can't do it. And people that back fashion brands thinking they can take an old name and make it into a multi-million project overnight. Look how long it took Burberry. You know, the investment, the time. I'd like to see him. And also, I think we need the press to be kind, to give him the space. Look at how people have reacted to Sean Gurr at Alexander McQueen. So cruel. And actually, as you know from when we talked before, he's done a good job. But give him the space and time. And I think he also deserves the space and time at Chanel.
I think at the moment Chanel has the legacy, but now they need a creative director that would maintain that legacy, because sometimes just to be a brand is not enough. So my eyes will be, I have to say, whether he does menswear or women's wear, my eyes will be on accessories, because based on what I saw from Matthieu at Bottega, the accessories were one thing that were very universal. I could take menswear or women's wear bag, and I could see it for everyone and anyone. And on that note, I want to thank my guests and to you for watching Fashion News. Follow me for more news through the week on Instagram and TikTok, and here every Sunday on YouTube. Click on the link in my bio for details of where to watch, and don't forget to subscribe for exclusive content. I'll see you next Sunday. Mwah.